The politics of who becomes the Senate President of the 10th Assembly has come and gone. After the election of the presiding officers, it's now time for the selection of the principal officers at the Senate. The principal officers include the Majority Leader, the Deputy Majority Leader, the Minority Leader, the Chief Whip, the Deputy Chief Whip, the Minority Whip, and Deputy Minority Whip. Well, the report, however, making the rounds is suggesting that the ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, appears to be foisting a leader on the senators of the minority parties in a race for the Senate minority leadership. While some have outrightly condemned the move, others have suggested that it is the norm and not out of place, as the emergence of the Senate presidency and his deputy is usually staged for a time such as this. The former senator representing Kaduna Central, Shehu Sani, joins us now for a conversation on the process for choosing a Senate minority leader and the ongoing power play in the 10th Senate. Good afternoon and welcome back to Newsday. Senator Sani, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me in your program.
All right, so with the intrigue that continues to build with this situation, what is your opinion on this so-called plot to destabilize the minority houses and minority parties by foisting a supposed APC leadership or someone who is more friendly towards the executive? What is your opinion on this?
Thank you once again. Well, a minority leader is supposed to be a representative of the minority legislators in the Senate or the House of Representatives. And by that, it means that he is going to be the galvanizing factor and also the symbol of the opposition in the parliament. Now, what the ruling party is trying to do is to see how they can foist a minority leader that will be in sync with their programs, policies, and also agenda in the National Assembly. And by that doing, they are trying to prevent the opposition from playing its role as an opposition. They want a lackey, a stooge, or someone who is not going to be hostile to them. Well, that is politics. But what is actually going on in the National Assembly today on the politics of minority leader is that in the ruling, in the major opposition, which is the PDP, there are factions, the G5 faction and also the mainstream party. So what the G5 are trying to do is to help the ruling party by having a minority leader that will simply play the card of the ruling party. And if you have a minority leader who is an agent of the ruling party, simply you have a stooge, and almost he is going to synchronize and also be another rubber stamp minority leader. So in earnest, a minority leader is supposed to be one that will stand for the opposition and that will form an alternative representative in the parliament, and that one that will present and also forward the agenda of his party. But they are trying to prevent the opposition from playing its role and doing that in a due process way by having simply a minority leader that will be in sync with the ruling party. So that's what they're trying to do.
Now, in the meantime, Senator, there are reports that an aggrieved member of the PDP, who is also a former governor of a South state, is actively collaborating with these forces that are trying to foist a friendly minority leader to the ruling party on the Senate. So I'm wondering, how can the PDP put its house in order, in a bid to prevent such internal sabotage from recurring?
Well, to be very candid with you, the main opposition, the PDP, has not taken a serious action against those who undermined or betrayed or subverted its own course in the 2023 election. They have opted for the path of reconciliation, of unity. But what is very clear is that the faction that broke away from the PDP and formed the G5 are determined to work 100% in line with the ruling party. And there is no way you can call yourself an opposition party or a mainstream opposition if the people you are appointing into position of leadership are simply the agents or the stooges of the ruling party. So the former governor, who was a member of the G5, all he is trying to do, I believe, is to have a minority leader that he anoints and of which will give him the lever and relevance in terms of his engagement with the ruling party. And that is all that it is. But I believe that the ruling party has enough membership to be able to get most of its own programs and motions and bills through. But it's natural that they should need an opposition that will work together with them, but not to the point that you have an opposition that is simply a rubber stamp. And I think this is what they are trying to do. The danger is that the opposition will disappear once you have a leader, a minority leader, who is there simply to work for the ruling party. And the main opposition, PDP, has to be very careful about this. Because if they allow those among those who are G5 to have an agent who is going to be the minority leader, they have simply surrendered for the next 4 years the role that they ought to have played in the National Assembly. And that is a fact.
Well, what role of action could the minority leadership have now? What would you advise them to do in order to not get themselves in this situation where they might be obsolete if they are outsmarted by the ruling party?
Well, naturally, a parliament supposed to work in cooperation or in partnership with the executive arm of the state. But in the last 4 years, we have seen the legislature became simply an appendage of the ruling party, where the lower Senate simply approves anything that was sent by the president. Now, from the statement made by the new Senate president, my friend Godswill Akpabio, he tries to present a balance that they will work in partnership with the executive, at the same time protect the sanctity and the independence of the parliament. Well, that will have been a good thing to do. But the signs that are coming in is that they also want to have a minority leader who is a stooge of the ruling party. And if that is done, then it will be the death of the opposition as far as the National Assembly is concerned. Well, for what I know is that the two main opposition in the National Assembly is the PDP and also the Labour Party. And why today you hear more about the Labour Party playing more of an opposition role is the fact that the PDP seems to have mortgaged their responsibility as a main opposition party to the Labour Party. Nobody says you should go to the National Assembly and fight the executive, but knowing fully that the dignity and integrity of National Assembly is centered on its own independence, and then there will be no independence if everything the ruling party wants, they simply get it. A minority leader supposed to be in a parliamentary system. They are like an alternative government, but in a presidential system, it's not the case. But if you have a minority leader, a minority leadership that will play the role of an opposition, it will be better for the country in the sense that issues will be looked at from different perspectives, and the nation will also have a different perspective on issues and then decide which one is okay. But if you have an opposition leadership that is working for the ruling party, simply you have a one-party state, because it is the parliament that will naturally stop the the move towards a one-party state and a one-party dictatorship. So, but if you have an opposition party that is ready to play the cards of a ruling party, then that is the death of the opposition. The PDP, you know it, they stand a very dangerous position. They are standing on a very dangerous position now. Despite we have a president in the country and the parties are in court, but they have to know that their relevance, their dignity is based on the distinctiveness of their position as far as the political realm is concerned. And they have to be the opposition. And you can't have a stooge controlled by someone outside of the parliament who is ready to always play the role of a puppeteer and always manipulate what the National Assembly minority caucus will do. So to me, if PDP is not very careful, they will simply disappear out of relevance if they don't play the role of a disciplined, a responsible opposition, if they turn themselves into the stooge. We have a president for the first time who was once a senator in the country, and he knows very well the relevance and importance of the parliament. And I think it is also not in his own interest that he has an opposition that is simply going to be a stooge of his own party. After all, the opposition to the president, the National Assembly, came from his own party. But he should allow the opposition to play their own very role. And I believe as a Democrat, he will do that. But there are people within the PDP that simply wants to use the National Assembly as a bargaining tool and also as a tool of their own relevance in terms of reaching a bargain with the executive or with the president. And I don't think they should do that by using a stooge at the National Assembly, either in the House of Reps or in the Senate. If you have a president that will engage senators and members of House of Reps at a good time, and also make sure that there is regular consultation, certainly most of the programs and policies of the government will get through and not destroy the opposition by having a stooge as their leader.
Now, Senator Shehu, Sani, you've talked about, what the dangers of foisting a candidate on the House of Assembly will be. But can you talk us through the proper process, from which a minority leader should emerge?
Well, a minority leader is the choice of the minority. And naturally, this is not done simply on the floor of the National Assembly. When you have a minority caucus, they will meet regularly and decide for themselves who is going to represent them as minority leader, deputy minority leader, minority whip, and deputy minority whip. So when they decide this is what it is, and then they make formal presentation to the chamber, this is our own collective decision. But if they go and in the process of that, what the ruling party will try to do is to see how they can sponsor a candidate, give him all the necessary resources and backing to get as many supporters from the minority as is concerned for him to emerge as one of them. Because the fear is that if an independent candidate emerge as a minority leader and a leadership emerge as a minority caucus, then they are going to have a serious battle as far as issues are concerned in the chamber and the National Assembly as a whole. So the process, election of minority leaders come from the minority, and it is usually done after due consultation with members, and a decision is taken with also a proper perspective on zoning. If you have minority that come from one zone, deputy should come from another, the chief whip should come from another, and then as it goes that way. So that is how it is done. But naturally, there will be interference, there will be meddling, but it is for the minority leaders to decide what part of history. Do they want to have a leader who will be seen to be a satellite of the ruling party, or do they want to have a leader who will play the role of an opposition and then stand to defend the interests of their own party? Or do they want to be seen to be stooges of someone who is outside of the parliament, who is always there to manipulate them? From what I've seen, the rumor going around that there is a former governor who wants to foist a minority leader. I think the governor is all doing everything possible to show the president that he is in control of so many things, despite being out of power. And one of the instruments he wants to use in the next 4 years is to be in charge of the National Assembly, both the House of Reps and the Senate. And that will not be in the interests of the party, nor in the interests of those who are there. But let's also put it in very mind that if you are elected as a minority leader or chief whip, doesn't mean that you cannot be removed. If you don't perform, or if those you are representing feel aggrieved, and if you don't really play your role, there is the tendency of within months or years before your tenure comes to an end, you will certainly be removed. So it's not something that is there for 4 years. At any time, the legislators can decide to remove you when they found out that you are not doing what you are supposed to do.
The PDP definitely fighting battles outside of the court and within their own party as well. It continues. But I want to speak about representation within the country and your opinion on that between the Senate presidency and the speaker race, this minority leadership race as well. All these appointments of the service chiefs, do you feel like representation of the geopolitical zones, which was a very key issue at the beginning of all of this, do you think that these geopolitical zones are being represented fairly?
First of all, I'm highly impressed with the way and manner in which the Senate president has emerged. When you have a country that has a Muslim president, a Muslim vice president, a Muslim speaker of House of Reps, and a Muslim Chief Justice of the Federation, what remains is, if you have a Muslim Senate president, all the suspicion, the criticisms, the accusation of an Islamization of Nigeria will simply be indefensible. The government will be at a very tight corner. For them to wriggle their way out is going to be very difficult. So the effort made by the Vice President Kashim Shettima to support Godswill Akpabio, I think it has really saved this country. It has also saved the government. It has also saved the image of the country. We want someone who can perform. We want someone with an experience. But we are still a developing country where people are still attached to their ethnic identity and religious affiliation. And you can't, in this kind of political equation, marginalize or sideline one part of the country or alienate one religion in favor of another. It is simply indefensible to have a country where all the major leaders are being headed by Muslims. That is very wrong. So having Akpabio as the Senate president is one of the best things that should happen to remedy the situation for the next 4 years. And that is a good thing. As far as the service chiefs are concerned, President Bola Tinubu is fair. Unlike the culture in the past, in the last 8 years of Buhari administration, where one part of the country occupies almost all the security apparatus of the state. This is one of the most fairest in the history of Nigeria. You have the Chief of Naval Staff coming from the southeast. You have a Chief of Air Staff coming from another part of the country. Chief of Defense Staff coming from the north, and then Chief of Army Staff coming from the southwestern part of Nigeria. That is fair and equitable, and people are wrong to say that that is marginal. There is nothing marginal. That is the right thing to do, and it is done. What we should expect from our security chiefs now is how they can address our security challenges, how they can extinguish the flames of terrorism in the northeastern part of Nigeria, how they can crush bandits in the northwestern part of Nigeria, how they can address security challenges in the middle belt where ethnic killings are still going on, farmers and herders are still killing themselves, what they can do about insecurity in the southeast and even kidnapping in states like Ekiti, Ondo State, the southwestern part of Nigeria, what they can do about stealing of our crude oil in the south, in the coastal region of this country. These are the challenges before them, and they should be able to achieve. And it is also important that the president set it very clear to them that their relevance and continuity in that office is based on their performance. That should be a clear diversion from what has been in the past, where service chiefs will exhaust their tenure in office and then it will be extended and extended while they keep on failing the country and failing the government. So, and on the appointment is fair. The appointment of also George Akume as the SGF of the Federation is in the right direction. And I'm also in support of the appointment of Bajamiela as the Chief of Staff, because Chief of Staff occupies a very important and strategic position. It's a position of thrust, and you need someone you know, someone you have been working for. And what President Tinubu must avoid is former governors who felt entitled. And there is nothing wrong with compensating people who have worked for you, but not to the expense of the country, where people are looking for a place they can retire. The National Assembly today has already become a retiring base for former governors. The Federal Executive Council should not be. That's a very key and important position where competence should be the key. The governors of the states should hands off and allow the president appoints his ministers from those that will work with him. If a president cannot dictate to a governor who will be a commissioner, then a governor should not dictate to a president who should be a minister. If this country works, it is the president. If it fails, it's the president. So that is my view on that.
Now, definitely President Bola Tinubu has hit the ground running as he has promised. He has made a number of bold decisions, like removing fuel subsidy, retiring all old service chiefs, disbanding governing boards of several government-owned parastatals, and so many others. However, his bold decisions have also caused a lot of hardship to already weary Nigerians. So how would you advise the president to balance this delicate act of governance?
Well, I'm happy with the decision which President Bola Tinubu has taken, the sacking of the service chiefs, the dissolution of the boards of federal ministries, departments, and agencies, and also the appointments which he has made. These are all positive steps. And as far as the issue of the subsidy is concerned, I'm happy that the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, the government, and also the Labour are discussing on ways to which the issue of palliatives can be addressed. But we also have to be very mindful of this, that whatever reform policy and program the government is taking, it has to take consideration on the suffering and the hardship inflicted on people. We are still a developing country. I know there are people who are rich. I know there are people who have looted. I know there are people who are comfortable. But we are still a poor, developing country with a mass number of people. About 133 million people in our country are said to be poor. And whatever policy and programs you have to take cognizance of the kind of suffering which they will undergo through. About what has happened in the past, the president has to be reminded that the economic crime perpetrated in the last 8 years is not simply about redesigning the Naira. So it's not simply about MFLA and Bawa. The nation has been plundered. There's a need for Nigerians to see more action. What happens? Let him go after the ministers of the Buhari administration, probe them, and let's see what has happened there. Let's go after the heads of the MDAs. Let's see what happened there. Let's go after the service chiefs of Buhari. Let's see what has happened there. The president should also go after the cabal wing of the last government. They need to be probed. It's not only the people that are supposed to be making sacrifices. Government should recover money that has been looted under the last administration. Nobody should be spared. After all, in Brazil today, a former president is on trial. There's nothing wrong with the president going after Buhari and members of his kitchen cabinet. This is the time to do it. The courage, the boldness to be there. I know Tinubu for a very long time, and I don't know him as a coward, as one who has the courage to stand up and fight. And I believe this is the time for which to demonstrate that. You can see it even online. People who are not in support of him, people who are critical of him, are in support of the action which he has taken. So we will have to continue to press him. He should have nothing to fear. If what he is doing is right, is just, and is in the interest of the future and progress of this country, I should simply move ahead. Let us see the rich also making sacrifices. Let's see the comfortable also making sacrifices, not simply the poor. That is my view on this issue.
Well, as always, former Senator Shehu Sani, it's good to have you on the show. Thank you for having this discussion with us, and we hope to have you back soon.